Welcome back, everyone. Our second session focuses on how Korea and India can harness the power of artificial intelligence for inclusive development and the future of work. Our first speaker is from the notorious Indian Institute of Technology, Madras. Please help me welcome Professor Balaran Ravindran.
So thank you for making me notorious. So good afternoon, everyone. And so I have been given the task of waking up the audience after an amazing lunch we had. At least the speakers had a great lunch. So I'm going to talk about the India's AI governance guidelines. So if you haven't heard of it, don't be shocked, because we actually released it last week, right? And so last Wednesday was when it was unveiled to the public, and so I also happened to help draft the guidelines. So, and these are the actual slides that we use for presenting it to the actual audience and last week. So I'm going to talk about that. So before I get going, right? So I just want to say a few things. In fact, we had looked at the Korean AI law, or at least the proposed law, quite closely while we were drafting this. And I'm happy to note that there are a lot of points of agreement between how India wants to approach AI regulation and how Korea has gone about doing it, right? So first thing, if you notice it, we don't call it regulation. We call it governance guidelines, right? And likewise, the Korean law doesn't call it regulation. It calls it AI adoption, enablement, or something like that. So it's like, so we don't want to actually jump into regulating a technology which can potentially be significantly beneficial to our economies, right? So we don't want to jump into making it more restricted even before we kind of understand what are the benefits and how would we go about using it. Another key point that you would see in both our approaches, both the countries' approaches, is that we are quite aware of the lack of capacity in both our countries. I mean, if you look at the Korean law, there are several sections in the law, right, that talks about strengthening the AI capacity in the country, right, and increasing the amount of training that has to be done, and the number of high-tech researchers that are coming out, and so on and so forth, right? And in India, so we kind of organized our recommendations into 6 pillars. I'll get into that in a bit. And 3 of those are about enablement, and one of the pillars is on capacity building, right? On making sure we have both the technical capacity to solve problems using AI, as well as the regulatory capacity to recognize, right? So when we need to manage the risks of AI and so on and so forth. And the other half of our recommendations, other 3 pillars that we have organized, is all about risk management and risk mitigation. So very similar in structure, again, to how the Korean law has been organized. So there are sections, there are chapters that talk about enablement, and there are chapters that talk about risk and specific obligations of companies and end users of risk. So, and I think there's a significant commonality between the way the 2 countries have gone about this, right? So I'll skip the next slide. It's not, oops, great. I'll skip that because that gives us the timeline, which says it took us a long time to get here. But then I looked at how long it has been taking Korea, so I don't feel so bad anymore. So, and I think the Korean law doesn't even go into practice until Jan 2026. Right, so that it's been approved by the parliament, but with the time for when it goes into force. Right? And so I don't know when our thing would go into force. So like I was saying, so this is kind of the vision and objectives with which we set out to form the guidelines. So making sure that there is a balanced and inclusive AI ecosystem. Right. So how do we go about fostering that, and making sure that AI for growth is not harmed by the governance guidelines that we are putting in place, right? At the same time, try and understand what are the risks that are specific to the Indian context, right? So one of the things which I like to say is that if you look at many of the like the European jurisdiction, right, they're worried about future risks of AI, right? So they're making sure that AI doesn't get too powerful, especially in the US, right? All the time they're talking about super intelligence and AI becoming so powerful that they replace humans and so on and so forth. But they're not talking about risks that are manifest today, right? I mean, we have so many issues where, for example, we have things about psychopathy. That's the latest AI risk that people are identifying, where the AI tends to agree and amplify your fears, your psychosis, and leading to children committing suicide or people having their mental conditions, mental problems exacerbate. So, in fact, while we were driving down to the venue, I saw a bunch of banners. They were all in Korean. I couldn't read it, except two banners which had some English word on it. One said mental issues, mental illness, and the other said ChatGPT. Okay, I'm just kind of connecting the rest of it, thing that seems to be a matter of debate on campus as well, right? So how much students are getting impacted by these, and so now people are beginning to wrestle with these kinds of risks, right? So, and there would be more depending on what kind of society you're operating in, and so we really have to think about this. In fact, one of the strong recommendations we have given to the government is to start an immediate research program, where they try to identify and categorize risks that are peculiar to the Indian context. That should happen right away. So that's one of the immediate recommendations that been made to the government. And of course, we have to align AI to global standards, and also make sure that we have a enabling ecosystem that encourages innovation and adoption of responsible AI frameworks, including things like sustainability. So we actually have called out sustainable AI development as a desirable target that India should progress towards. But there are no specific recommendations that ask us to do that, except that the government should set up policies, right, that give incentives for sustainable AI development. Right? So we based the guidelines, right, the governance guidelines, on what we call 7 key principles, or 7 sutras, right, which is like the fundamental kind of truth, right, if you will. And if you notice, our first sutra is something which is there in the preamble of the Korean AI law. Trust is the foundation, right? So the Korean law also starts out by saying, oh, we are looking to build trustworthy AI systems, right? And so trust is the foundation. So unless people are able to trust the solution that they are interacting with, the AI they are interacting with, right, the adoption, the diffusion is not going to be very high. And the second key principle for us was people first. Right? So we wanted to make sure that we're encouraging human-centered design, and in high-risk use cases, we have strongly recommended human oversight for the foreseeable future. So we don't think the AI is ready yet for it to be completely autonomous. Right? And the third key principle, this is the top 3 are the real key principles, and the others were slightly, you can say, things that we try to accommodate. The third one is innovation over restraint. So what we mean there is we really want to encourage people to think about new solutions and not worry about whether they are satisfying some nitty-gritty regulatory aspects of it. So we want to make sure that they can innovate, but do so in a responsible manner, right? So that's the third key sutra. And then, of course, fairness and equity. So we want to look at how we would prevent bias and promote inclusion. And in a country as diverse as India, right? So we have to start thinking about, India has 22 official languages, but it's just not 22. It's just not the 22 we have to worry about. So if you just take my state I come from, it's Tamil. There are at least 7 major accents of Tamil. Right? The vocabulary some people down south in my state use, or actually up north in the state, they're mutually unintelligible. Right? Some of the words you wouldn't even understand. I mean, so both of us, Mr. Kumar and I both speak Tamil. I'm pretty sure we have local slang which each other cannot understand. Right? So it's not just a question of 22 languages. It's so much variation, local variations. I think some of the language researchers in Google India have found out that there are at least 800 dialects in India, which each have at least 100,000 speakers. So 800 languages with at least 100,000 speakers each. So they are not like tiny. I mean, they are tiny in the Indian context, obviously. 100,000 is like a drop in the ocean for us. But still, if I just say, instead of saying that, that have 0.01% of the population speaks this language, if I translate that 0.01% into a number which is like 100,000, so you think, okay, now I realize the scale of the problem that we're dealing with. So it's not easy, right? So we have to really think about, how would we enable systems? So we have tried to say that, the government should really support, research and, invest in resources that allow a larger pool of, larger community of developers to address this question. Right? It shouldn't be individually. If you are going to let the company address this, maybe a Google or a IBM, one of those biggies can do it, but then we will be at a disadvantage as a country. And then the next pillar is accountability. So which assign clear responsibility, right? But the biggest challenge when we talk about AI is that we really don't even completely understand the entire ecosystem of actors in AI. I mean, there are people who provide data, there are people who build models, there are people who deploy the models, they fine-tune the models, right? And then there are people who offer services based on the models, and then there are end users themselves. Right? So there are so many players in this ecosystem, and we really don't understand completely how accountability should be spread across these players. And again, that's something that we call out explicitly and then give some recommendations on how to address these. Right? And then this is another sutra which actually caused a lot of debate, was understandable by design. Right? So we want to ensure transparency and explainability, but it is not just a question of, hey, open up the black box that is AI, right? I don't even know what that means. Right? So it's not like, when people talk about this, it's like sticking an fMRI helmet on a human being and saying, I'm just going to look at how the neurons fire and explain why he made that decision. Doesn't work that way, right? So we are actually asking for more nuanced understanding of this. And finally, of course, we have to talk about safety, resilience, and sustainability. So we have a set of recommendations that talk about how to encourage energy efficient, secure AI development. So one of the things, right? So if you look at these principles, you realize some of this means different things to different sectors. So if we take fairness, right, or if we take equity, right, it means different things to different sectors. So in banking, right, you would like to be gender blind when you take decisions. But in healthcare, you want to pay attention to gender, right? So what exactly are the constraints you would be using when you're talking about fair, right? And likewise in the legal system in India, so there are different sectors actually have different civil laws that apply to them, right? And so fairness might not quite mean the same as, okay, treat everybody regardless of their religion or caste the same, right? In fact, you shouldn't. So those are all kinds of nuances that happen in the Indian context. So we have to figure out how would we do this, right? And similarly, understandability, like I said, explainability means different things to different people. For example, in healthcare, right, the doctor might need the system to explain decisions to them, but the patients, they operate on trust, right? They don't really expect an explanation from the doctor. Yeah, why do you say I have this disease? Yes. The doctor says you have a disease, take this medicine. 90% of our patients go away and take the medicine. So we have to figure out what does explainability mean in different sectors. So one of the key recommendations we are calling out is that many of these characterization of risk and the regulatory framework that goes with it has to be driven by the sector. I think a holistic AI regulatory regime doesn't make sense for many of the cases. Maybe for some, maybe like data protection, you might want to have a holistic view and things like that. But when you're talking about risk identification, risk mitigation, right? Our strong recommendation is that it should be driven first from the sectors. And of course, if needed, then the government should be open to making wider laws. But initially, we need to have a better understanding of how the sectoral regulations can apply to these. Right? So like I said, we have split up our architecture into 6 pillars. So infrastructure, capacity building, right? Policy and regulation, risk mitigation, accountability, and institutions that kind of enforce all of these. So the first thing is about infrastructure. So the idea here is first we have to expand the access to compute and data resources for AI development. India is significantly compute poor. And even though we love to say that India has a lot of data, it's not data set, right? It's not data usable for AI building, right? So we really have a lot of work to do before we can get there. So the government has started all of this. We kind of, even ahead of these recommendations, the government realized all of this. So we have started an initiative to increase availability of compute to researchers and to startups, and as well as trying to systematically gather data sets, sources that are being put out by the government, and converting them into data sets and making them available in a public platform, right? And the second, which we are very keen on, particularly from a sovereignty issue, is to support building of indigenous foundation models, right? So foundation models are powerful. They're not the only AI solution out there, but they are significantly powerful solutions that allow us to solve a variety of problems. And we really need to have our own models, not just for the security issue, but also because they can be trained to capture a lot of nuances, like I was telling you about local dialects and things like that, which these large models don't, right? And the third thing, so one of the places where India has actually stolen, I would say, a march over the world is in the digital public infrastructure that we have available in the country, right? The payments are amazing, the user ID authentication, right? The national authentication scheme is also very, very powerful. So I think, so we are thinking about how can AI integrate with the digital public infrastructure, and how to build a digital public infrastructure for AI itself, right? So all of these, right? And finally, we're talking about incentivizing MSME adoption. This is like micro, small, and medium scale enterprises. How would you encourage them to adopt AI as opposed to only the big players in the scene doing that, right? And so we have a set of, let me not go through the recommendations individually. So it's all available online. You can look at it later. I'm happy to share a link which you can send to all the participants, right? Okay. So the second pillar, pillar is on capacity building. It's about empowering people and institutions. So of course we want to build more AI programs. So a lot of, there is a national AI curriculum that has been published for colleges, right? But we are also working with the school certification boards and creating a curriculum, AI curriculum for the schools. So that's going to come out soon. In fact, somebody said in one of the press interactions, one of the government officials happened to say that, oh, we are thinking of starting it from 3rd grade, right? And it became huge newspaper headlines, government to mandate AI in schools from the 3rd grade or something like that, which I don't think is the intention of the government at all, but that is basically what has happened. And one of my colleagues is actually leading the program, and they have attributed the quote to him, and you can imagine the kind of grief he's getting nowadays, right? But then it's not just about AI skilling to build AI solutions, but we really need to have a more public awareness, right? About what are the harms of AI, what are the benefits of AI, where you should, people should ask for disclosure, right? Am I being served by an AI or am I being served by a human? And if the disclosure comes, they should know, right? If they see that, oh, this is AI generated, they should know what the implications of that are, right? It's not just enough for somebody to just label something as, for example, somebody labels it as GMO food, right? You need to know what that means. And then you should be wary of food that comes with that label, and so on and so forth. Right? And finally, we also strongly recommend starting intensive training programs for public officers, both like in the civil service as well as in the legal fraternity and the policing and so on and so forth, so they understand the impact and use of AI in their domains. Right? That's another strong recommendation that we made. Right? Particularly in cybercrime and also even in non-cyber crime, so the whole notion of how people used to do forensic verification of some of the visual imagery and things like that, it completely changed. The whole dialogue setting has changed, right? So we really have to worry about how these things will happen, and people need to be aware of that. So the third pillar is on policy and regulation. So our idea is that we should have a very agile framework, and the first thing we wanted to call out is that a lot of the so-called AI risks that people worry about, including things like bias and fairness and so on and so forth, can to a large extent be handled by the existing laws and existing regulatory framework. because they do prohibit, biases of all types that are relevant to that particular sector, right? So the idea here is to leverage existing laws to the extent possible. So we actually call out examples of where this can be done in the report, and perhaps reinterpret and expand the laws as needed, like in the copyright case and data protection and liability and so on and so forth. But don't jump into trying to frame new laws, right? Until you are making sure that you understand the extent to which, AI exceeds, use of AI risk exceeds the existing regulatory framework, right? And to help us understand this better, so we should have regulatory sandboxes for innovation, which I think again is a recommendation that has been made by the Korean government as well. So that is another thing that we want, and we are encouraging the government to set this up maybe in the next 8 months or so, government-backed regulatory sandboxes. And finally, while the technology is not there yet for us to verify any compliance, right, in all aspects. So, but the government should actively start supporting research, right, that allows us to build this technological capability to start, tracking compliance of AI developers to these laws. So, which even though people keep saying, oh, we have to watermark this, we have to track that, we have to trace the provenance of digital artifacts and so on and so forth, but the technology doesn't exist yet. So we have to start working on it. So these are some of these things that we call out. And the third, the fourth pillar is called risk mitigation. And again, the idea is to understand risks, right, and try to see if we can manage risks proactively. There are several key recommendations we have introduced here. So one is on trying to build an India-specific risk classification, right? And the second is about, I already spoke about why India-specific risk is needed, but the second is to launch an AI incident reporting system, right? So in India, we already are part of this cyber incident cert, right? With the cybersecurity incident reporting, India is already part of it. But I feel that, I mean, not me, a lot of people feel that AI incidents, right, go beyond cyber incidents. Some of these AI incidents that you would like to report might not even have a cyber interface. I mean, you could have been denied a loan unfairly in a bank by an AI, right? You wouldn't call it a cyber incident, right? But not necessarily. I mean, you go fill out a form on paper and the bank denies it to you. I mean, you have never interacted with the computer at any point, right? So it does not look like a cyber incident to you. But you still want to report it. So the idea here is to have a mechanism by which you could, gather information about potential risks, right? And then talk about mitigating it, right? So without this AI incident reporting, you even wouldn't be able to surface what are all the risks that you should be guarding for, right? And the third thing is about encouraging voluntary safeguards and robust red teaming for the various organizations that are involved in this, right? So why voluntary safeguards? Because like I said earlier, right, so we don't really yet have the technology for us to say that we will enforce it regardless of whether you say you do it or not. And many of the large companies, large players in the ecosystem are already signing up for voluntary safeguards. People are saying, oh, we will add watermarking, we'll add explicit labeling to contents that are provided by AI, we'll make sure it is very visible when you're interacting with an AI system and so on and so forth. So many companies have already signed on to these voluntary safeguards. It's not like it's too fantastic to expect them to do that, right? And finally, the other recommendations are around embedding human oversight in high-risk systems. And what is high risk? Hopefully, the first thing will define that soon for us, right? Of course, there are a few things which we can already identify as high risk, which we are calling out in the report, right? Yeah, the fifth pillar is on accountability and ensuring what we call proportional responsibility, right? So we have to think about implementing this, what we call graded liability across the value chain. 3 minutes, okay. And also enforce existing laws visibly, right, and consistently. So we shouldn't give anybody a pass because they say, oh, it's an AI, we didn't know this is what's going to happen. No passes for them, right? And significantly promote transparency reports and grievance redressal. And finally, use technology-led tools for compliance by design, eventually when they get ready, right? And so a bunch of recommendations leading up to that. And the final thing is on setting up certain national level institutions, right, which will oversee this enforcement of these guidelines and making sure these are rolled out in appropriate timelines. And this is again similar in spirit to what the Korean law recommends as well. And the first one is an AI governance group, which is going to look at policy coordination and oversight, and it's going to be, consisting of representations from multiple ministries. It's kind of like an interministerial government body, right? And then there's a technology and policy expert committee, which will provide high quality technical and strategic guidance to the AI governance group. It consists of domain experts, both from academia, industry, and perhaps from the government itself. And the third recommendation is to set up a very robust system of AI safety institute, not just one centralized institute, but perhaps pulling in expertise from different sectors and different geographic regions as well, right? And which will talk about risk assessments, recommendations for standards, and will also take care of global engagement and building all these technology tools that we were talking about. And the final piece is to kind of strengthen the sectoral regulators by building capacity on trying to understand the impact of AI and talk about domain-specific governance and enforcement. So that's basically, so this is the implementation roadmap that we have. Short term, we have to really focus on establishing these governing structures, risk frameworks, and expand AI awareness. In the medium term, which is hopefully within a few 8 to 12 months, strengthen the regulatory frameworks in the different sectors, implement the incident database, the regulatory sandbox, and in the long term, continuously refine these governance frameworks. So nothing is set in stone, so we could potentially go back and say, we really need an AI law now, right? And also work on global engagement, and perhaps start drafting new laws as we think are important. Right, so I'll stop. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Our next speaker is a fellow at the Observer Research Foundation, Middle East. Please help me welcome Dr. Siddharth Yadav.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I want to say thank you to SNU and the IFS for organizing this wonderful event. I'm very happy to be here. And thank you to Professor Bala for that wonderful presentation as well. I think because I'm also from India, I think there will be some overlap between the ideas he presented and my presentation as well. So my presentation focuses a little bit more on the comparative analysis of India's national AI strategy with Korea's strategy, and understanding what are the sort of complementarities between the two approaches and how we can sort of forge the way ahead. So we'll start with taking a brief overview over global AI development. Now, I sort of feel that AI is unlike any other preceding technology that has been introduced to the world. I mean, theoretically, research into AI has been going on for over 50 years, but ever since ChatGPT came onto the market at the end of 2022, it has quickly sort of captured the global imagination. What started as a humble chatbot has now become a central pillar of the national security strategies and economic strategies of all the major powers around the world in less than 3 years. I think it will be very difficult to find any other technologies that have scaled this rapidly in the global imagination. Now, with this pace and scale of innovation and development, we're presented with a number of opportunities as well as challenges. In terms of opportunities, particularly for developing economies and the global south, technologies like AI sort of offer the opportunity to circumvent and accelerate traditional and linear industrial development paths. It offers the opportunity to accelerate exponentially the pathway to upskilling and training and formalizing economic sectors that were traditionally informal. In healthcare, AI can help accelerating advancements in medical diagnostics, drug development, clinical care, and ensuring positive patient outcomes. In agriculture, it can help us in terms of food security by helping farmers identify crop diseases, optimizing land and water use, and even forecasting yields. In terms of education, AI can be used for delivering personalized training and education to students across urban and rural areas, thereby sort of aligning with the goal of developing inclusive AI. And perhaps I think the most important function that AI systems can perform right now is in distribution of information and digital tools to underserved communities, thereby expanding participation in the digital economy. I think one of the best examples for this that I have seen is in some Indian projects like Kisan GPT, which essentially involved the development of a small language model that was voice to text. And and it was designed specifically for farmers so that they can get information about productivity, crop quality, disease management, and how to essentially like more insights on how they can acquire profits. And so this sort of gives an example that the value of investment in AI is not concentrated at the frontiers, at the bleeding edge. A lot of impact can be achieved by sensibly and reasonably deploying and distributing the dividends of AI development. So while there are many such opportunities in the world today, we're also faced with a number of very serious challenges. Uh, One of the foundational challenges is infrastructure across the global south. Sort of lack of connectivity, stable access to power, internet, and compute is one of the biggest bottlenecks for AI development in developing economies. I think another big challenge that countries like India as well as Korea are facing at the moment is the talent gap or brain drain, where a lot of local AI talent sort of gravitate towards Western countries and sort of create a vacuum in local AI ecosystems. So addressing that by creating sort of widening, in fact, talent pipelines and promoting talent mobility should be a priority for countries like India and Korea. Now, it is also a reality that most of the most powerful and cutting-edge AI models are being developed in the West, particularly in the US. And over recent years, this has led to a lot of discussions on algorithmic bias because it tends to lead to inaccurate representation of socio-cultural and linguistic realities of the Global South, which Professor Bala touched upon very briefly in his presentation. Another major challenge that the world faces today is misalignment in governance and regulatory frameworks across regions and across countries. I think this can be most prominently seen in the different approaches that the US has taken in comparison to the EU. Now, the US sort of the US is taking like a light touch approach. They don't really want to sort of introduce any national federal AI laws. They want to keep the country very innovation friendly, where the EU has taken a very stringent risk-based and security-based approach. And that has led to a lot of problems for AI developers in the US wanting to enter into the EU market, as well as AI startups that are coming up in the EU. So aligning regulatory policies and governance framework in different countries is also a big priority. And last but not least, since the topic of this panel touches on the future of work as well, one of the biggest challenges that we are facing at the moment is automation of white-collar jobs, particularly entry-level jobs, and sort of the creation of a phenomena that the World Bank calls premature deprofessionalization. Now, this concept applies particularly to developing economies that are seeing more and more of their population sort of transitioning from blue-collar to white-collar jobs. And as LLMs and AI are particularly good at knowledge work, the experts at the World Bank believe that it can lead to a situation where the jobs that the emerging workforces in these developing economies are being trained for will disappear before their training is complete. So those are some opportunities and challenges. Now we will transition to looking at what are, in this sort of dynamic landscape, what are the core issues for Korea and India. With Korea, the core imperative is sustaining and promoting productivity. As we all know, the country is experiencing a lot of demographic shifts and labor market pressures due to stagnant birth rates. And the goal is to use AI for sustaining industrial transformation, automation, and societal management. India, on the other hand, is sort of on the other end of the spectrum due to a massive economic dividend and With that, 80% of its workforce still being in informal sectors, India's imperative is towards economic formalization, mass inclusion, and social development. So now we will quickly go over the two national strategies for these two countries. South Korea's strategy is sort of defined by its national vision of being an AI G3, which is a top 3 global superpower in addition to the US and China. It's a very top-down and manufacturing and hardware-first strategy, which is state-led and driven by big corporate houses like Samsung, LG, and the SK Group. The focus is on building manufacturing capabilities and infrastructure, which involve massive state-backed hardware and data infrastructure, with Korea already specializing very well in high bandwidth memories and in GPU production. The goal is to, as I mentioned earlier, to boost national productivity to solve for the demographic shifts. However, there is a sort of risk inherent in this approach. In the strategy outlined by the government, one of the key targets is to reach AI adoption rate of 70% in industry and 95% in the public sector by, I believe, 2030. Now, with this massive push for AI adoption and uptake, it sort of harkens back to the problem I mentioned previously of job displacement. Now, if there is such a significant push for AI adoption, there should be an equal amount of focus given to AI upskilling and training initiatives. Otherwise, there's no guarantee that the rate of job creation will be able to match the rate of job displacement. So, and for India is, again, at the other end of the spectrum, following a more bottom-up and ecosystem-led model. The strategy is to focus on public-private partnerships with industry and academic institutions like the IITs. And the core focus is socioeconomic and cultural inclusion, because a major part of the Indian population is still not very educated and still employed in the informal sector. So sort of bringing them into the fold of India's digital vision is a key priority. And as the previous speaker also mentioned, the focus is on sort of leveraging India's sort of expertise in digital public infrastructure as a platform for delivering AI solutions. When it comes to like aims such as financial inclusion through the unified payments interface, the UPI, or delivering key government products and services to as many people as possible. So that's the focus of the strategy, and the goal obviously is to manage and provide solutions for health, agriculture, and governance for its 1.5 billion people population. Now, the risk of this sort of bottom-up and ecosystem-led model is that the time frame for local and national capacity building can be a bit too long. Because traditionally the Indian government has taken a more hands-off approach, but in recent times they have been getting a bit more proactive. But compared to Korea, I think because the aim is to include as many people as possible and distribute digital solutions to rural areas, I'm not sure how quickly the government will be able to actualize on these priorities. So for India, the time scale, I would consider that to be the primary challenge. Now, if we sort of take a step back and take a big picture look at India and Korea, we can see that they have complementary strengths. So Korea has hardware, manufacturing, and capital. It has market-leading hardware when it comes especially to high bandwidth memory. It has infrastructure to support the construction of AI factories and major infrastructure projects, and it has deep capital investment earmarked in its AI G3 vision. India, on the other hand, has a massive and primed user base. I think we have the highest number of ChatGPT users in the world. And it has diverse data sets. Now, I know Professor Bala mentioned that we say... Okay. So he did mention that maybe data sets is not the right way to phrase this. So I would say that we may not have the best or the largest data sets, but we have the largest source of potential data sets. So we also have an advanced IT workforce and a huge and a very impressive range of eminent institutions, IITs being a part of them. We have our DPI, and we also have population scale, like population scale targets that are ready for AI solutions. Now, with these complementary strengths, what are the potential pathways that Korea and India can walk down? So in the next few slides, I will go over a few suggestions and recommendations of how we can sort of work together to solve the specific problems that we're facing. So the first suggested pathway is talent mobility. Now, for context, according to a global AI index that was released in 2024, South Korea is a global leader in AI competitiveness. I believe it ranks 6th in the competitiveness metric. But when it comes to talent pool availability, Korea is still lagging behind it. I think it's places 13th in that list. Whereas India, on the other hand, holds 16% of the global AI talent pool, and is estimated to be home to 1.25 million professionals by 2027. So I think what the argument that I'm about to make is pretty obvious. India has a lot of talent, a lot of labor, and widening and streamlining the talent mobility between the two countries can be a very good first step. A strategy for mutual benefit could include co-funding certifications designed by Korean corporate houses as well as Indian partners that can be educational institutions or IT companies to create a pool of job-ready talent. Again, in the academic sphere, establishment of joint fellowship for AI researchers and the creation of fast-track visa categories could also be very helpful. Adding high-demand AI-specific roles to bilateral trade agreements like the India-Korea CEPA can also help in streamlining worker movement. So these are some suggestions focused on talent. The next possible pathway is more focused on securing the future of jobs, particularly entry-level jobs. One of the strategies that I suggest could be creating government and industry-backed AI proficiency standard certifications for fresh graduates for entry-level jobs that align with the specific requirements of companies in Korea and India. Another way could be establishing a bilateral venture fund, established by the Indian and Korean governments that invests in startups that are aiming to specifically help small and medium enterprises in both countries in terms of AI adoption and also for job creation. A third approach could be a high-level joint policy body with the mandate to map AI disruption in the labor markets of India and Korea to sort of inform and guide the skilling initiatives that I mentioned in the previous slide. So a lot of these points were already mentioned in the guidelines by Professor, but I think instead of sort of looking at India exclusively or Korea exclusively, I think sort of a more bilateral sort of engagement when it comes to high-level policy making or academic certifications or joint fellowships could be very helpful for both countries. A third possible pathway is aligning AI ethics and governance standards. One possible step could be launching an India-Korea AI ethics and governance forum, which would obviously be chaired by high officials from both countries. A forum like this could be based by identifying shared values. As Professor mentioned previously, there are already a lot of convergences between the principles that are valued in the Korean AI strategy, as well as the 7 principles outlined by India. So identifying shared values, mapping divergences in regulatory expectations, because we come from a very different socioeconomic context. So obviously, you will never see a perfect alignment between the two countries, and as well as facilitating cross-border stakeholder inclusion. So a forum, a bilateral forum such as this should not only involve government officials, but also corporate houses, institutions like the SNU and other civil society groups that can sort of represent the values, the shared values of both countries. Another step could be, in this pathway, could be establishing a partnership between AI safety institutes in Korea and in India to develop common benchmarks, sharing best practices, and developing joint protocols for AI safeties and response protocols. And a third way could be developing a joint framework for AI interoperability that works towards a mechanism for sort of mutually recognizing risk assessments. Because if an Indian AI developer wants to enter the Korean market or vice versa, since both the countries sort of prioritize risk assessment and risk mitigation, if there is a sort of shared framework where certifications of risk assessment can be recognized and can be like interchangeable, I think that would be a very good value add for the ecosystems in these two countries. Now, the fourth possible pathway is inclusion-focused collaboration. Now, building on initiatives like the Bhashani project in India, which is sort of a national sort of umbrella program for developing. One of the objectives was to develop AI tools and language models that can operate in different indigenous languages in India. So sort of modeled after the Bhashani project or similar projects across the world, maybe an Indo-Korean data commons and compute framework can be pursued, in which AI developers, Indian and Korean, can leverage data platforms from these two countries to actually create high-quality, annotated, inclusive data sets. Perhaps another way could be promoting a Seoul-Delhi charter on inclusive AI governance, which would involve forming bilateral working groups to sort of that would align with the expectations of Korea's human-centered AI, which was part of the Seoul Declaration at the AI Summit in 2024, and India's AI for all principles and this could also involve jointly developing technical standards and auditing frameworks specifically for inclusive AI. So, for instance, how diverse were the development teams of certain AI tools and systems, and how diverse was their data set in terms of languages, and so on and so forth. And just some concluding remarks. When you look at AI superpowers right now, you look at China and the US. Both of these countries are focusing heavily and spending a lot of capital on developing frontier models. Scaling laws still seem to be holding, and because of this high amount of investment, there is always a talk of an AI bubble and a consequent market crash. However, as I tried to demonstrate throughout the presentation, especially in the beginning with tools like Kisan GPT and the Bhashani project, it is a reality that a lot of the benefits of AI development are not necessarily concentrated at the frontier, but can be achieved by pursuing objectives like inclusive AI. And so the partnership, if there's a partnership between India and Korea, it should focus on ensuring that the dividends of AI development are distributed widely and not concentrated in a few sectors or regions or groupings. And finally, as I mentioned right at the beginning, AI is a very transformative technology. However, as I'm sure everyone in this room knows, the AI value chain is extremely unruly and globally distributed. And it leads to constant uncertainty about the future, particularly because of the era of great power competition that we're living in. But to navigate such uncharted waters, and an Indo-Korea strategic partnership on AI development should be one that primarily is based on shared values and principles, such as democracy, social development, and economic inclusion, rather than geopolitical competition, I think. Thank you.
And now, please help me welcome our final speaker for this session, Professor Yongjung Gum from the Department of Industrial Engineering at SNU.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm really honored to be here to present my research view and my personal view for inclusive AI. Actually, I'm an industrial engineer, so my research is primarily focused on innovation management using AI. So I do some research to predict the promising technologies in the future and how AI can enable the fuzzy front end of innovation, which we say this is the fuzzy front end, then that the very unstable environment. So first of all, I will talk how AI has transformed the current situation, including the business context. And then I will explain how AI changed the fuzzy front end of innovation. And then I will also talk about how the gap is increasing because there's a big corporations here and the small medium enterprises here, but still the much of the money and the capital is hugely invested to the big corporation as well. But small and medium enterprises has some difficulties in my research context. So my presentation is heavily focused on the management context. So okay, let me start. So everyone agrees that the AI is working as a driver for industrial and corporate transformation. If you see these kind of companies, very well-known big companies like Samsung, Hyundai, LG, they have all their AI system. Big corporation has very strong and very competitive AI system by themselves. For example, Samsung has a strong AI system for predictive maintenance and yield optimization. If you see Hyundai, they have the AI system in smart mobility and logistics as well. They also have a very strong software to creative idea generation, so etc. So if you see LG, you know the XL1, the foundation models that supports the design and R&D creativity. So everybody do very, very good job in their work. If you see the international context, yes, Amazon has the very powerful AI logistics models. NVIDIA has a strong AI-powered design models, etc. So everyone has very, very good things. So we can say, yeah, if you see the different industries here, different sectors, so AI is no longer confined to the digital sectors only, and it's becoming a core infrastructure for manufacturing, energy, so new products and services, right? So in this kind of context, I want to explain a very narrow scope of the innovation, which we scholars call the fuzzy front end of innovation. The fuzzy front end of innovation is that the very starting point of the innovation management, which the new ideas and new creative ideas are actively generated. So if you see very briefly about the fuzzy front end of innovation, for example, the company starts to the trend monitoring and technological forecasting to predict the future, and then they try to create the creative idea, so which we call the idea generation phase. And then the concept development screening is that if there are so many different R&D or the technological ideas, that companies has to screen it to provide some kind of useful cases. So this is about the prioritize the most promising concepts like this. Conventionally and traditionally, these kind of tasks has been an area of the expert, very small, talented experts. And what they are doing is that they invited very strong, educated person, and they do some brainstorms and do the active discussions and derive the good result. But nowadays, AI has been contributing. AI has contributed this kind of fuzzy front end of innovation, which make the gap between the large corporations and small medium enterprise so large, because big corporation has enough funds and they have great resources to do this, because the fuzzy front end of innovation requires a huge amount of the money and capitals and human capitals as well. But the small medium enterprise can't afford to this. So I want to focus on this context, this specific management context for inclusive AI. So before continuing the presentation, I want to explain a little bit of our research. Like we are doing some data-driven technological forecasting, data-driven new product service development, which is more on the idea generations here. So if you see some very specific examples, for example, we make some opportunity maps for supporting the creative idea generations and new product opportunities, for example. We do some projects with the big corporations that support the opportunity maps. Some companies call it technology vacancy map or some vacuum map. So anyway, so we developed some kind of AI-driven algorithms and software to support this. What happens here that companies collect a lot of database like patents, publications, and reports from all over the world and analyze the data using the AI system and develop those kind of small or big map. So some maps. So if you can see some vacancies over there. So what AI is doing is that they recognize that the vacancy and try to transform this actual vacancy into the technological opportunities or the market opportunities. So if you see this map, those are the small dots representing the technological opportunity that the company has to focus on in the future, which make a lot of engineers and managers very easy to go on to the next stage. So this is actually what happened in practice. And another examples of our research is data-driven ideation tools. So normally this ideation, because the ideation is the what humans do, right? So actually this kind of area has been heavily relied on the expert, but nowadays AI is not actually replacing it, but actively helping those kind of innovation. So yeah, we do some we design the procedure or protocols for the data-driven or AI-driven ideation tools, and those are some examples that we actually make as a pilot project. So the reason the reason I'm talking about this is that we of course the AI has been prominent in many different kind of management contexts, but even in the area that the humans work is quite essential, like fuzzy front end of the innovation, AI is going through and widening the gap between the big corporations and the small and medium enterprises. So for like 10 or 20 years ago, people can't imagine that this kind of work can be done by the AI, but nowadays we do. So AI is actively doing some data-driven decision-making, enabling the real-time market research and customer insight generations and technological market trend forecasting, etc. And also AI is contributing to provide some development agility by automating design, simulations, and testing processes. So they can, the time to market is dramatically accelerated. And also AI is contributing to the organizational boundaries, and they foster the open innovation to get a lot of different players and stakeholders coming together with external AI startup customers, academic institutions as well. So yes, this is how actually AI is working in the management context. As I say, the idea generation, the concept development, product design, the prototyping, the launch, where the people has been a real player. But the thing is that we all know that AI is a double-edged sword, right? So definitely AI has been an engine and is already an engine for the productivity, innovation, and creativity, efficiency, and etc., right? We all know that. But at the same time, you also recognize that AI is widening the gaps between whatever the player is. So for example, I talked about gaps between the large corporations and small medium enterprises. And also AI is widening gaps between some people with AI capabilities and people without the AI capability. This is the fact, right? So definitely AI is the catalyst for the productivity and innovation, but it can also trigger inequality. So we have to consider how and what kind of inequality can be caused by the AI. So this is a very, very important question for me. So we need to think about what kind of AI-driven equalities. So maybe the most the easiest and the very basic inequality is economical perspective, right? So we all know that, yeah, so as the previous presenter noted, the entry-level engineers or the entry-level software engineers, their job is disappearing and their job is replacing by the AI, right? So definitely firm has less demand on the routine labors or very entry types of engineer, but they have high increased demand for the AI engineers and top levels engineers and data scientists as well. If you come to the social inequality, yeah, so there are some issues like an unequal surveillance system and policing system. So, you know, the AI-powered CCTV systems are more frequently installed in the low-income neighborhood, which is a very big problem. And from the perspective of technological inequality, this is about the data, actually. So I think, you know, the Amazon's AI hiring tool, because this tool has been very controversial and has been removed from the Amazon. But actually, the Amazon's AI hiring tool discriminated against female applicants because all the data is not all, most of the data was trained by the male-dominated historical data. So if there are some women's curriculum vitae or the applicants are going on, they automatically decide this is not promising or something like that. So this is about the data. So this happens all around the world. This is a simple example. If you see the countries with limited language resources, and yeah, definitely if you use the ChatGPT or generative AI using the English, you can get a bunch of information in the world. But if you use this with a limited language, with limited resources, the quality of information is not good as much as we expect from the English version or something. So this is another thing. And yeah, there are many examples. So facial recognition system often misidentify women or people with color more frequently than the other, like the white man or something like that. We call it privileges or something. Yeah, so we need to at least recognize which kind of inequality can be possible in management context or something like that. So if we specifically focus on the AI-driven inequality in corporate context, because I'm doing the corporate context job. So I personally feel that there are new forms of AI-driven corporate inequality. As I mentioned before, what I'm doing is the fuzzy front end of innovation and predicting the future and help engineers or managers to identify potential challenges that, yeah, this is very important because if you succeed in these cases, you will be succeeding like 10 years later, 20 years later. So this is very important job for every companies. But AI-based innovation is highly focused, in this context, highly focused on the big corporation that has much resources and money, yeah, especially. So large corporation has massive proprietary data set. So they have much of any kinds of data set like a transaction, logistics, customer behavior. And these lead very effective and very well qualified machine learnings or some kind of methodologies. And definitely the large corporation can afford to build a dedicated AI R&D programs, so they have a lot of infrastructure, they have strong human capitals, etc. So everybody knows this, right? And because they have a lot of money, they have easy access to any kind of like global AI vendors, and they can easily make contracts with very good conditions or something. But small, medium enterprise, we can easily imagine the situations, right? They struggle with limited, fragmented, low-quality data that is very, very insufficient to train very good AI models, because data is everything. So basically, they don't have so much money or some human capitals to do this. And for this reason, even if some small and medium enterprise try to incorporate the AI system, they heavily rely on third-party AI platform without no specific customization. So actually, the customization is really important to provide a high-quality result, but they fail to this, and they lack financial capability or capacity to invest the data governance as well. So computing infrastructure or AI expert, this is the what we are doing. So why the gap is growing? So we all know the reason, actually, right? So infrastructure, data readiness. The successful AI implementation requires not only the algorithm, they need some very diverse conditions like data quality, the governance, and infrastructure. So those are very important part, but the information is really imbalanced. And organization culture is also very important. It's not only the technology, so it requires some organization change, but especially the leadership commitment, and this is another problem. And the third one is the strategic focus. I believe that this is, personally speaking, I think this is very big issue for my experience, because they are small, medium enterprise tend to concentrate very, very specific, very, what I have to say, it's not investing to the very high impact area. They just try some fragmented project at the very pilot stage, and then everything is stopped over there. So the strategic focus is very important. And the external environment or government issue, including some building the ecosystem. Yeah, so this is another factor that the gap is growing. So we need to consider how to support small, medium enterprise in AI transformation. So I would suggest three kind of strategy. So start small, learn fast is the first one. So yeah, we need to encourage small, medium enterprise, like starting with a small scale, the high impact pilot project that is really a high impact, and invest good capitals and good human capitals on the specific projects, and learn from the very small projects. So these kind of projects can be manifold, but such as the automations or some predictive task, which has a huge impact if it is successful. And the second direction may be the build capacity, not infrastructure. So because of course the infrastructure is very, very important in the AI implementation, but the thing is that they require a lot of money. And the infrastructure problem can be resolved by the ecosystem as well, if the government or industry build a strong ecosystem across the many different industry. So I would say they have to build some capability, not infrastructure. So focus on developing human capital, then organization or the organization capabilities by AI training, mentoring, and try to improve the access to shared AI platform. And a third one, yeah, actually this is very important, is about the ecosystem. So I would say this strategy as collaborate through ecosystem. So we need to foster partnership among small, medium enterprises, universities, AI startup, and even the big corporation to develop and test the practical AI solution. So yeah, To sum up all of the how to support small medium enterprises, we'd say start small, collaborate broadly, and tailor by industry, because we need to provide sector-specific information or the system, because it's not the universal platform that resolves all of the things. So problem solving should be very specific with specific industry. So let's see the implication for Korea's industrial futures. So I would say South Korea stand at a very strategic crossroad. So if the AI adoption gap continues to grow, we will be in the two different extremes, like one side with very technology intensive firm with accelerating innovation, and the other side is fall behind and losing everything. So because the gap is growing. So closing this gap will require many different strategies that I will explain later. So we have to focus on many specific questions that for the inclusive AI for corporate setting, from the technological level, which is very micro perspective, when the companies try to develop a new certain technology. Questions like how is AI technology is designed and who has access to it. So many different considerations should be provided. And from the macro perspective, so national level, for example, we need to ask, do AI policy achieve not only economic growth, but also social inclusion or sustainability? So this is national level. In the middle, there are some different contexts like a farm level or inter-farm level and this industry level. So because I am focused on the relationship between small, medium enterprise and large corporations, the questions like inter-firm levels, does AI intensify or mitigate the power imbalances between large corporations and small, medium enterprises? So we have to build some ecosystem to cover the data access, including the collaboration model, standardizations, and profit sharing. There are many issues over there, and the government has to focus on resolving those issues. So this is the last slide. So we need to move forward, because AI is definitely a big challenges and big opportunities. But the cohesive strategy to promote AI-based innovation should be very important. And this cohesive strategy should be sustainable and socially inclusive. So I would say there are 4 different dimensions maybe. So technology, talent integration, which cover the people with technology, right? So maybe we can suggest building a national AI skill track, or maybe we can let embedded AI fellows to going through or rotating through small medium enterprise to build the first production and provide the use cases. And the second dimension, maybe we can think about the innovation ethics integrations, which focus on the AI impact and safety review. And we also consider the bias and lobbyist tooling. And as I emphasized before, the public-private collaboration is also very important. The joint development of AI industrial ecosystem and mission-driven consortium and regulatory sandboxes are following this criteria. The final criteria must be the global cooperation platform. So we need to share the AI capabilities through AI initiative across many different kind of countries. And definitely we need to collect different types of data, cross-border data, and compute federations as well, that develop some strong federations to provides this kind of sustainable and socially responsible AI. Okay, as a conclusion, maybe, So actually, we all know that artificial intelligence is reshaping our futures and our industry. And the real test of our success will not be measured by how advanced our algorithm become. Rather, it should be measured how broadly and fairly the benefits of AI systems are shared. So as we look toward the future of work, let us ensure that technological progress is matched by some social inclusion, ethical responsibilities, and human dignity. So then we can build a great AI-powered system and society that is not only innovative, but also inclusive and sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Now, this session will be moderated by Dr. Chi-Yung Song, the Executive Director of the Airport Industry Technology Research Institute under Incheon International Airport Corporation. Please help me welcome Dr. Chi-Yung Song and the speakers back on stage.
Okay, good afternoon. Once again, this is Chi-Yung Song from Incheon International Airport Corporation. Actually, it's time to finish, according to the plan. That's kind of a better way for you, but we have our mission, so we cannot finish at this moment. So please give us at least 10 or 15 more minutes, because we have very passionate three speakers. So, and I have few questions to our speakers. At the same time, I think, Flower, you may have some ideas or comments or some questions to our speakers. So let me start first. Professor Ravindran, thank you for your very informative kind of presentation. Actually, you explained very well about Indian government initiatives. I really like the title, the governance guideline, not regulation. So anyway, and you raised an issue about the risk management, and you pointed out that there should be some critical issues in terms of the societal risk within India. But at the same time, I think we can have many very critical kind of risks from the global society, because it's quite vulnerable. Not only India, but also Korea. So please give us some comments on some, if you have any cases, but if you don't have any cases, it's okay. But how we can together respond to the possible kind of a global risks together, Korea and India, because as you mentioned, India has its own strengths and also Korea has its own strengths. Okay, and first your question, and next. Professor Yadav, yeah, I really like your policy recommendations. The talent mobility, job security, and ethics and governance standard. And also you mentioned about some the forum, joint framework, and some initiatives, charters. As a policy researcher, I really like your presentation. And yes, let me ask you, which one would be the first step we have to take together, the Korea, in terms of the cooperation between Korea and India? And also, one funny question. Actually, 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I visited Delhi, India, in order to participate in some seminar organized by the ORF. And at the time, I met few numbers of Indian young people, and they really like Korean drama and the K-pops, and they crash landing on you. Yes, it was a big hit in India. So your perspective on talent mobility, especially the Indian young people to Korea. And finally, Professor Kum, wow, the kind of AI inclusiveness and innovation in terms of the business perspective very well. And yes, you mentioned about economic inequality, social inequality, and technological inequality. And I like your case on the Amazon. Yes, and please explain the economic, social, and technological inequality. In my opinion, is very closely related mingled with each other. So which one would be the first factor or element we have to tackle? Okay. Yes, please.
So there are a couple of potential global risks we're talking about, right? So one of those is about people who are building frontier models and pushing the capacity of these AI models beyond what is controllable and so on and so forth. So one question that we really have to ask ourselves, by India and Korea passing laws, we are not controlling literally the 4 people in the world who are capable of pushing that boundary today. Right? Eventually we would have to address that question. But today, me making a law in India saying that, hey, you should not build super intelligent models in India, right? It doesn't quite, have any effect on people who are actually going to continue doing the research. So that's one question. How much effort should we spend on controlling things which anyway the world is going to ignore? That's one part of it. The second part of it is about some of the global adoption, right, which lead to risks in our countries. So for example, people build in safeguards for these foundation models that are soundly tested when the models are used in English. Right? So what people have been beginning to show, particularly in some of the bigger labs, actually Microsoft and Google labs that operate in India, is that if you use a second language, which these models have also been claimed to be trained on, like Hindi, right? You can actually jailbreak through many of the safeguards which have been tested for in English. Right? So this is something that that needs to have better understanding. Our safety institutes are the organizations that can work on this, right? It's certainly not in the larger commercial interests of the US organizations to fix these problems, right? So I think these are questions that we should identify and work on. I think jointly would be even better than India working on this alone, and that's why we're calling out enabling more stronger international collaboration for some of these problems. So even though at the global level, some of the risks are claimed to have been addressed, the same models when we use it in our economies would actually lead to more problems. So those are the kinds of risks that have the global models that have implications locally as well.
So thank you for that question, and yeah, I completely agree with you. Like K-drama has been really skyrocketing in the Indian households in recent years, and K-pop. I believe a Korean show, K-pop Demon Hunters, is like top of the Netflix charts at the moment. But in regards to your first question, I think a good first step for an India-Korea partnership on AI development would be establishment of a joint policy body. The first priority should be identifying what are the shared values. I think Ravi had just mentioned during his presentation that, the committee was going through the Korean sort of AI law while drafting the Indian governance principles. So of course there was a little bit of mutual influence between the two. But I think if you look at the larger global landscape, particularly the US, Europe, and China, one of the biggest divergences that happen is in their values that they're promoting. Now, when President Trump entered the White House earlier this year, he has sort of really blacklisted some values in AI development and the technology sector, some of them being diversity, inclusion. So everything, a lot of what we talked about today is a no-go for the Americans, at least right now. And it is also like an unfortunate reality that most of the innovation, the cutting edge innovation, is still concentrated in the US and China. So in this sort of larger landscape of great power competition, we need to find out how we can map smaller islands of cooperation. So, and I think a good first step would be to focus on what principles can we prioritize. India and Korea both are countries that champion values like democracy and freedom. So, so sort of analyzing where are the convergences and where are the divergences would be a very good first step. I think the first step should be very cautious, and we should not be very heavy-handed, because AI is a very unpredictable technology. There are a lot of unknown unknowns. So sort of claiming that within 1 year or 2 years we'll be able to sort of create a joint framework, I think would be a bit too ambitious. So sort of, I think sort of understanding what are the shared values, and step 2 could be creating a charter, and Seoul Delhi Charter would be a sensible step. So it would not be prescriptive, it would not be mandatory, but it would act more as a guiding framework for AI developers in the two countries.
I really like how you said blacklisted values.
Okay, thank you for your question. And you asked about kind of priorities among the different perspectives, like economic, social, technological. So I would say the easiest one is the technological perspective, because if you resolve this issue, what you have to do is we need to include as much as data as possible, and try to incorporate the researcher from some different regions. So when I attended the conference this July, the conference is about the computational linguistics, and I realized that half of the session is related to kind of inclusive, like how to train and how to mitigate the imbalances between the big the region with the big data and region is very small data. And another thing is to provide some transparency for the decision making, because if we see some technological problems, like as you can see, the other cases that cause inequalities in technological perspective, we need to prove which one cause this problem. So there are many researchers working in the transparency of the model and inclusive AI systems, incorporating diverse but very strong data set from the world. And I personally feel that we need to invite researchers from different sectors and different countries, like especially in the developing country, because we have limited data set. For instance, the language data set from the emerging or some developing country. So yeah, I think to sum up, I think the easiest one and the perspective we can easily tackle is the technological perspective, but at the same time, as you mentioned, these are all related to each other. So economic thing and social and technological is kind of interrelated each other. So if we try to tackle the technological perspective, maybe this highly enhanced model is going through the economies, so we can develop the economic perspective as well. And if it's spread into the social economical perspective, we can deal with the social perspective as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ravindran and Dr. Yadav and Professor Gill for all the answers. And I think maybe any comments, questions from the floor? Yes, please.
I'm sorry I missed the first part of the lecture, but I agree with your assessment. I also want to put it on record. These are my personal views, not of the government. So, Chatham House rules, I hope. So one is, so first is that as a realist, I do agree with what Professor Ravindran has said, that we can make as many rules as we like, but are the people who really are doing the cutting edge research going to be following them? And, we can talk. So I was at UNESCO 5 years ago, and they were, at that time, we finalized the ethical principles of artificial intelligence. And, the entire 193 countries sat down and discussed them to death. I don't know what happened to them. They were adopted or not adopted. I left before they could. But my point is this idea of, putting together the values and having them and seeing what direction AI will take has been around since, I think, several years now. But I don't know whether they are, again, being if there's any use of that particular discussion taking place. I mean, yes, we need to stay engaged. Yes, we need to develop common standards. But at the same time, the big boys will make the rules, and the rest of us will probably have to just deal with it. And Professor Young, I wanted to also ask you, business is very, I mean, it's the survival of the fittest. You spoke so much about the SMEs and how we need to help them, but I think business has always worked like that. That when the buses came, the bullock carts went out of business. So why is it that we should? I mean, upskilling, yes, ensuring that it doesn't leave a whole generation of workers behind and leave them jobless is a separate discussion. But ensuring that all businesses have equal access or make equal, take AI uptake is equal is something I really feel that the government or policymakers may not be able to manage and should not manage. I mean, it is a survival of the fittest, right? I mean, that is what business and capitalism tells us. So I want to hear your views on that. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And yeah. Okay. Yeah, actually, my plan is that to hear one more question or comment, and then conclude together because we have some time limitations. Sorry. Okay, the last question. Yes.
네, 인도는 세계에서 가장 젊은 국가 중 하나입니다. 그런데 AI 도입이 이런 상황에서 빨라지면 당장 타격은 젊은 인재들의 어떤 채용 축소, 일자리 격차 이런 우려가 나오기 마련인데요. 인도 정부나 산업계는 이런 변화에 대해서 좀 노조나 청년층의 반발이 좀 커질 가능성을 어떻게 보고 있고 또 어떻게 구체적으로 대응하려는지 궁금합니다. 그리고 좀 덧붙여서 인도는 자타가 공인하는 IT 초강대국이지만 PC 보급률이 이제야 올라가고 있고 또 스마트폰 보급률도 아직 80%엔 못 미친다고 하더라고요. 이런 상황에서 AI 도입 가속화와 AI가 야기할 사회적 불균형 이런 과도기를 인도는 어떻게 넘어갈 수 있는지 좀 인도만의 전략이 궁금해요.
Thank you. Yes, his question is that India is a very young nation because so many young people. But if AI adoption is so fast, then maybe they will have some kind of trouble. They will be in trouble getting the job because the fast process of automation. Now, what would be the Indian government's kind of a strategy on that? Because the young people can protest those kind of new technological progress. The second one is that India has very slow kind of adoption of distribution of PC or computing system. Okay, he said, not me. And yes, so it's that kind of a this infrastructure kind of a lackluster infrastructure kind of building. It can create some kind of a digital divide or some kind of AI divide. What would be the policy?
So can I answer that first, or you want? I mean, the first question was to her.
Okay, for your question, actually this would be the questions or comments anyway. So of course this is what business is, yeah. But at the same time, then what is our responsibility then? So if this is the case, this is what business is doing, but this is the government's duty to provide all the access. I mean, when the smart factory, like 10 years or 20 years ago, there's the huge boom of the smart factory in Korea. And at the same time, the situation, I feel this situation is the same. The government tried a huge amount of the money to invest the support and support the small medium enterprises. And the thing is that the application is quite fragmented and they do some very small pilot project and abandon. And I feel like AI, I'm afraid that this time this shouldn't be like that because the AI, as I mentioned, the fuzzy front end of innovation, this is not about the providing productivity. This is about the providing the chances, opportunities for the future. So at least the chances to, navigating the future and the recognizing the opportunities and getting the chance should be the same for even if it's a very small company or a big company. So in Korea we have some department, actually the divisions to do support the small medium enterprises, and in that organization, companies actually there are some institutions to support the fuzzy front end of innovation for the small medium enterprises, and they invest money themselves to provide the open fuzzy front end system to support the small medium enterprise as well. So yeah.
Okay. So I'll answer the other question first, but then I have a comment on your question as well. So first thing is, job displacement, right? So I strongly believe, and a lot of people actually who have been trying adopting AI in the industry agree, that the promise of completely autonomous AI system taking away the human jobs is not quite happening. Right? So people are actually finding out, even in an area where it is supposedly very good, programming, right? Even in the IT world, right? People are finding that they still need experienced programmers who can operate with these AI models, and they are not completely replacing programmers. So what is going to happen is, of course, entry-level jobs in programming are going to reduce. You're not going to need the same volume of people. So, but then the people who are coming in should also be trained differently. But the jobs are not vanishing 100%. So that promise, or that overblown promise of AI replacing humans, is not happening on the ground right now, right? So I think one of the policy decisions the government is making is to train everybody to use AI. Right? Regardless of their discipline, regardless of their specialization, they should start learning how to use AI to solve problems in their domain, so that when they come out, they are AI adept, right? And not kind of losing out because they don't know how to use AI. But AI completely replacing human workforce is not going to happen, at least not for the next few years at least. Right? And then second thing was about diffusion. I agree that the computer diffusion has been slow, but in terms of mobile phone diffusion, it's been extremely fast in India. I mean, it's reached, you can go to any village in India and you will find people with mobile phones, and in fact, so much so that many schools now use WhatsApp as their official channel of communication with their students across the country, and so on and so forth. So the diffusion has been extraordinary. Right? So coming back to the survival of the fittest and so on and so forth, right? So, but I think the technology is moving rather rapidly and very unevenly, right? And I believe there's a lot of value to be had in the MSMEs if you actually help them now, right? The margin of profit that they make would improve significantly. It'll make the companies more sustainable if they are able to adopt AI. And they're just not in a position to be able to do that. And especially in a country like India, where I think bulk of the industrial value is being generated by SMEs and not by the bigger manufacturing. I think you would probably have better numbers than I do. Maybe something like 60% or so of the value is actually created by SMEs. You don't want them dying. Right? That will be a significant disruption to the economy. So it's really behoves us to help them to survive.
I just wanted to quickly interject on the rationale and the big picture about making rules and regulation in the capitalist market where it is survival of the fittest. I think I would generally agree with that sentiment, but I don't think it is reasonable to apply that logic when it comes to AI, because this is a technology unlike any previous technologies in the sense that it is able to sort of make autonomous decisions at different levels. And it is sort of a technology that has the potential to really exponentially increase the productivity and skills of every sort of user. That sort of multiplication sort of potential has never really existed before. where one person can sort of quickly adopt skills from different sectors, from different disciplines. For instance, like I can probably do very basic accounting work using AI, even though I have no background in accounting. And I don't think any sort of a modality or system has existed before. And with every sort of unprecedented technology, I think it is reasonable to be a bit cautious. I also, so while I say that, I also agree with you that for many years now we have these best practices and sort of governance principles being released. Just recently in the UN General Assembly session, they released a new AI safety sort of framework, again signed by 193 countries. But you always question how sort of efficacious or how effective these sort of memorandums or like pinky promises, someone said earlier, would be. So I completely agree with you on that, but I still think it's one of those situations where it's better to be safe than sorry. And especially when it comes to sort of high risk AI applications, I think it is still sensible in critical sectors like finance and medical. So finance and so if you look at AI applications in these sectors, I think it is very reasonable to sort of regulate that and manage those risks. But when it comes to sort of commercial applications, I think it's a very dicey game. I mean, you've seen the EU tried to do that with the EU AI Act. It had risk categories that started from unacceptable risk and limited and negligible risk. So the problem is like the unacceptable risk technologies, like they don't exist yet. So it's kind of a useless category. And now the limited and negligible risk category includes LLMs and chatbots. But as a professor had mentioned earlier, now there are cases of like people experiencing psychosis, severe mental health events, committing suicides, driven by sort of their interactions with LLMs. So I mean, you can't justify it being possessing negligible risk anymore. So while these sort of rigid risk categories are sort of pointless, I feel I feel like in the long term, I think it is still sensible. It's sort of choosing the lesser of two evils, or sort of regulating out of necessity than out of choice.
Thank you. In general, we think we go straight, but actually we do some kind of a random walk with drip, the same to technological progress. That's why so many things happen, because we cannot imagine, or it's very unpredictable. Okay, I think same to the AI. That's why we're talking about AI inclusiveness and technological divide and many things. Anyway, as a chair, sorry for consuming more time, but I think we dealt with so many important issues in this sessions. And once again, thank you for all the speakers for your very passionate presentation and very active kind of discussions once again. And also thank you, Flora, for your active participation once again. And let's finish here. And we will have 10 minutes coffee break. It's good news to you, okay? And please enjoy your coffee. Thank you so much. Thank you.